Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on from where you've joined. Welcome to another webinar by Data Platform Geeks. Today's session is on SSIS in ADF, and our speaker for today is Sandy Winarko, who is a Principal Program Manager from Microsoft China. My name is Rohit, and I will be your host for today. And I have Satya Ramesh with me, who will be helping us with the moderation of today's Q&A and the entire webinar. So eDominer Systems, most of you already are aware of the brands under eDominer, Data Platform Geeks, SQL Maestros, Peopleware India, and Expand SMERP. But our today's focus is Data Platform Geeks, which is formerly also known as SQL Server Geeks. Apart from all the free webinars and the free events that we do, we also have our annual summit, which is Asia's largest data and analytics summit that happens every year in the month of August. And we had recently concluded DPS 2018. It was a 3-day conference from 9th to 11th, and the pre-cons on 7th and 8th. And this time it was held at Radisson Blu, a 5-star property in Bangalore. Like they say, a picture speaks more than 1,000 words. Here you can see more than 900 delegates participating at the Data Platform Summit this year from over 16 countries. You can see the corporate vice president of Microsoft at the end there, Mr. Rohan Kumar. And if you look closely, you might find Sandy here too, because when he was a speaker at DPS 2018. Our official website will be dps10.com. And if you go to the website, you will see that we have already announced Data Platform Summit 2019, which will happen on August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. These are the dates of our conference. And this time we will be having the 3 days of pre-conference on 19th, 20th, and 21st. It is only going to be bigger and better. So Satya will put on all the URLs for you to use. And why should you care? Why should you really care about the conference? The two main points would be professional education and networking. So the Microsoft experts that come down to this conference from various 16 countries and a lot of MVPs, MCMs from all over the world, trust me, it is absolutely priceless. You will be getting to learn a lot of deep technical content by some of the world's best trainers. And moreover, it's also about reskilling and upskilling. And networking, of course, you get to interact directly with these speakers and trainers, and you can make connections for life. And we also offer world's best infrastructure at Radisson Blu. And DPS involves the community. What does that mean? So we have over 100 sessions that we organize at DPS in the 3-day conference, and each session is chosen by the community. That is you. We put all the sessions up for voting, and you choose what you want to learn. And pre-registration for DPS 2019 has begun. What does that mean? It does not mean that you have to pay anything. By pre-registering, you only show that you are interested in attending DPS 2019, and we will send you a discount code, which we will send it to you in January after the official launch. And the discount code will give you the lowest price for the conference. So your next steps would be evaluate the summit, all our sessions, the 4 years, 2015, 16, 17, and 18. All the sessions are up on our website. If you visit dps10.com, you can evaluate our conference, the kind of speakers that we get, and then decide to participate in our next conference, that is DPS 2019. So this is the DPG core team: Amit Bansal, the founder and president; Manohar Punna, the vice president; and Avnish Panchal, Vijay Mishra, Vijay Reddy, Sandeep Pani, Prince Rastogi, Surbi Agarwal, Sakha Ram, and Dev Datta, all of them regional mentors from various cities. These are the eDominer teams across Bangalore and Kolkata. This was later at DPS 2018 on the stage. You can see the DPG core team and the eDominer teams on the stage. Special thanks to Microsoft for supporting us in our community initiatives. Data Platform Geeks community, of which you all are a part of. So continue being a member, and you can access all the free contents, the free videos, labs, etc., all the learning resources. One thing that I would like to highlight is that you do not have to keep doing the same thing again and again. You can just register once, and for every event you can just register. And we have come up with a new meetup model. The meetup model gives you an opportunity to organize meetups in your organization, wherever you are, be it Bangalore, Hyderabad. So you just have to fill the regional mentor form in our website under About Us in www.dataplatformgeeks.com, and we will revert back to you. So if you have any questions beyond this webinar, you can join our Facebook, LinkedIn, and our Telegram groups on mobile, and you can post your questions or answer the questions of the community. So a question that's asked by everyone: are our webinars recorded? Yes, we record all our webinars and set it up for free on our YouTube channel. So you can visit www.youtube.com/SQL Server Geeks. And we also have SQL videos on our SQL Maestros YouTube channel. So a lot of free content out there, free videos, so you can all access. And please do not forget to subscribe. So without any further delay, let's welcome Sandy Winarko and get started with the webinar. Over to you, Sandy.
Thanks, Rohit. I'm going to share my desktop. Give me a second. Let me know if you can start seeing it.
Yes, Sandy.
You can see it, right?
Yes, perfect.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to deep dive into SSIS in ADF. My name is Sandy Winarko. I'm the program manager for Azure Data Governance team based in Shanghai. My team covered SQL Server Integration Services, Azure Data Factory, DQS, Data Quality Services, Master Data Services, and also a part of Azure Data Catalog, for example. In today's session, I would like to take you into two parts. The first part is a basic lift and shift using SSIS and ADF. Essentially, this part will show you how to lift and shift your ETL, your traditional ETL workloads or SSIS packages into Azure using SSIS in ADF. I will go through the background of these services, and also I will show you a demo end-to-end from provisioning of the SSIS in ADF, monitoring it, deploying your packages, and also executing it. In the second part, I will show you a way to modernize your SSIS in ADF by showing how to orchestrate your workload using Azure Data Factory as a scheduling engine. And later on, I'll show you also three interrelated features, which is Enterprise Edition, Custom Setup Interface, and third-party licensing or extensibility that will allow you to modernize your SSIS in ADF to use third-party components, to use your custom component or open source component, etc. And I will show you a short demo after that. Okay, so without further ado, I will start with the background of our ETL and ELT services in the cloud. We start with SSIS on premises. As you've probably already known, SSIS on premises have been around for more than 10 years, right? The latest release that we made is SSIS 2017, and this release actually have a lot of big features comes with it. The first one is actually SSIS 2017 is the first version that can actually run on Linux. And it's also the first version that introduced a scale-out feature where you can actually install SSIS on the cluster topology of master and worker. And also, essentially, this is the first version that we actually integrate with ADF in the cloud to create a platform as a service, combined platform as a service for ETL and ELT services. And you probably remember, sorry, I have my emails pop up there. If you already remember, SSIS on premises is priced as a bundled service with a SQL Server, right? So in the cloud later on, we will show you how is it actually priced and how you can actually manage the running costs. So let's lift and shift SSIS into ADF. So you can see in the next diagram, we when we lift and shift SSIS into a new a platform in the cloud, we actually separate compute from storage. As you can see in the cloud, the compute is actually inside Azure Data Factory, where the compute resource natively will be called Azure-SSIS Integration Runtime. And where you actually store your SSIS packages will be in SSIS DB that you have a choice to host either in Azure SQL Database or in the new variant, which is called Azure SQL Managed Instance. So now you have a separation of compute and storage. You can actually scale separately between the compute and storage. So if you want to have a bigger database to store more execution logs, you can scale the SSIS DB. Or if you wanna have a bigger compute, you can scale up the integration runtime, for example. Okay. The key value point of bringing this platform as a service is actually you can preserve your skill sets. So essentially, what you are familiar with when you're deploying, designing packages on-prem, you can still use it in the cloud. So the familiar tools like SSDT, SQL Server Data Tools, or SQL Server Management Studio, or SSMS can still be used to connect to SSIS in ADF. So you essentially can use the same processes and you don't have to learn a new skill set. This is essentially an extension of your skill set and the tools that you're already familiar with. And on top of that, we also support, like I mentioned before, the extensibility of the SSIS Integration Runtime, or for short, I can call it the SSIS IR. This SSIS IR can be customized with a third-party third-party components, or a open source component, or even your custom components, etc. Okay, and the pricing is just like any other Azure compute resources. It will be charged by hour. But you can actually get a significant cost saving if you use the Azure Hybrid Benefit components or option when you provision it. Essentially, this option will allow you to bring your own license. So if you have a SQL Server already on-prem and you want to lift and shift your packages to the cloud, you can actually select this option to get a massive discount on your running costs. I will show you a quick web page on the pricing and show you the saving that you can get with AHB, which is the Azure Hybrid Benefit options. Okay, I'll show you quickly. Okay. Can you see the web page, Rohit, just to make sure? You can see it, right?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, that was. So if you see in the last column, you can see that if you provision the virtual machine, the VM for SSIS IR, and you select the Azure Hybrid Benefit, you can get up to almost, let me see the biggest, almost like 88% discount. So make sure when you use SSIS in ADF, you check or you select the Azure Hybrid Benefit option. I will show you how to do it on the ADF UI or ADF portal. Yeah, you can see all these prices. And you can see also we have close to 18 different sizes, all the way from 2 cores to 64 cores to run your SSIS workload. Okay, going back to my deck. So now, once you have your SSIS in ADF, you might still have data sources on-prem or on-premises, right? So in order for your SSIS compute engine to have a line of sight to your data sources on-prem, we have a method to use a virtual network. So essentially, when you provision your SSIS in ADF, the integration runtime have to join a virtual network that's connected to your on-prem data sources. So in this case, when you do that, you can essentially provision or isolate your integration resources, and even your SSIS DB if you use, for example, managed instance inside of VNet. So that's actually answer a lot of security concerns from our enterprise customer. Okay. Also, once you run your SSIS in Azure Data Factory, you can actually start taking advantage of all these modern features where you can run your SSIS package as an activity inside IDF pipelines. In this case, you can actually have a pipeline combining SSIS package execution with other ADF big data activity. like Databricks Notebook, or let's say HD Insight or machine learning, etc., etc. You can have all of them in a single pipeline and orchestrated by ADF. So you essentially can enter the big data world and modernize everything while still bringing the familiar environment of SSIS. And SSIS in ADF is in GA right now. It's available in 16 different regions. I'll show you what the regions are, and they are also ready with a 24/7 lifecycle support. So that's a quick background of SSIS in ADF. Now I will do a live demo, end-to-end, from provisioning the SSIS integration runtime, monitoring it on ADF portal, deploying your packages using SSDT to the SSIS DB, and also executing using SSMS. Let's start with the provisioning. Let me go back to my Azure portal. So in here, in my Azure portal or dashboard, you can see I have a lot of Azure resources, right? I have created a Azure Data Factory in beforehand. So I'll click on that. And it will show you all the tiles, the properties of my Azure Data Factory. The tiles that important for provisioning SSIS in ADF is this tile called Author and Monitor. When you click on it, it will essentially, let me just move this a little bit. It will actually show you the option to lift and shift your workload into Azure Data Factory. It will take a while. Give me a second. You can see it opened with the Azure Data Factory app. And the third option, which is called Configure SSIS Integration Runtime, is the one that you want to use. Let me just click on that. And you can see there. Let's see, okay. And you can see here, the provisioning blade is shown. Let me just move the control panel here. And here you can see that there are general settings that you have to fill. The name, let's just leave it by default integration runtime. The description, you can enter whatever you want. The type of this integration runtime is Azure-SSIS, which means it's dedicated for SSIS package execution. The location, what I want to highlight here, we have all this new location available for SSIS IR. The one that you probably interested is in Central India. We just actually made it available about, I think 2 weeks ago. So you can actually now provision it in Central India, for example. I'll leave it the rest of Europe. On the node size, because remember, SSIS integration runtime is a cluster of virtual machine or nodes. So the size you can select out of this 18, I believe 18 different sizes, all the way from 1 core to 64 core. You can use a standard purpose, general purpose, or even a memory intensive like the E-series VM. These are usually used for transformation heavy packages that, for example, sorting or anything that use a lot of memory. So you can do that. I will just leave it as a default in this demo. And then you can decide the size of the cluster, how many nodes you have in the cluster. It goes all the way from, you can see from 1 to 10. So you can actually have 10 nodes. So imagine you can have like 10 nodes of a 64 core machine, for example. In this example, I just used 2. So 2 machine of a standard 8 core machine, right? And edition, you can choose between standard and enterprise. Enterprise edition is essentially the same like a SQL Server Enterprise edition, where you can use a different advanced or premium feature. I will show you later on in the presentation, right? In this case, I'll just select standard. And this is where I said that you can save money. If you know that you have a SQL Server on-prem and you want to take advantage of the license, you just click yes. Then that automatically you can see the price, right? Right now, without the bring or your own license, it'll be charged US dollar $3.88 per hour. But if you click on yes to bring my own license, it'll be reduced to $2.32 per hour, right? And you can see also, I forgot to mention, when you change the size, the price also changed, right? Let's say the cheapest one, let's see, the 1 core machine, if I change that, let's see here, right? Look at the price, it changed to 0.4, so 40 cents per hour, right? I'll go back to, let's see, the default one, for example. Okay, and then if you change the standard of the license also, if Enterprise Edition obviously a bit more expensive because it has all this advanced or premium feature, you can see that when I select that, the price will change. Oh, let me see. Oh, maybe there's a little bug here. It should actually show you a price change in here. Let me check later. Okay. So anyway, so that's the general the settings for the compute resource. When I select next, this is the setting for your SQL. So essentially, where you decide to bring your own Azure SQL DB or Azure SQL managed instance to host your SSIS DB. So by default, the location will be the same with your compute resource. So to make sure that whenever you execute your package, the execution logs will be always written in the same region. You don't want to have your SSIS DB hosted in a different region because you don't want to have intercontinental traffic when you write execution log, for example, right? So in here, let me check my existing, let me select my own existing SQL DB server. In this case, where's mine? This one, for example, right? And in here, you can have a choice between either authenticating to that SQL DB server using AAD with the managed identity of your my ADF, or using the basic SQL auth server admin credential. You can see if I select this option, you don't have to enter a server admin credential anymore. But if you do that, then you have to make sure if you select this option, you have to make sure that your ADF managed service identity has the access permission to your SQL DB server. So in this case, I just use this. Oh, before that, I mentioned that it actually also support hosting your SSIS DB in managed instance, right? Managed instance is a variant of SQL DB that actually provision inside of VNet, and it because it's a provision inside the VNet, you don't necessarily have, and also because it's already have its size in the instance, you don't have to decide on the service tier. With SQL DB, you have to decide how big is your SSIS DB. You can have a different size from basic, S0, all the way to all these general purpose, business critical sizes, right? But if you select your server endpoint as a managed instance, that size actually comes with the instance, so you don't have to select that. I will show you an example where I can find a managed instance server. Okay, let me see I think it's under the subscription. If I click that, not that one. Maybe it's in the East US. Let me see if I have, yeah, this one. You can see this name. The server endpoint for managed instance actually have 5 parts. Normally, SQL DB has a server name .database.windows.net, right? For a managed instance, it'll be server name some numbers, which is the DNS prefix, plus database.windows.net. When I select this managed instance to host my SSIS DB, it will show that I don't have to allow Azure services to access it anymore. That actually by default you have to do it when you use SQL DB, but with managed instance, because it's inside of VNet, you don't have to do that, right? And also you don't have to decide on the pricing tier. You can see if I click there, you see it's gone, right? It only leaves you with the admin username and password, but the selection for the pricing tier and the option, default option that you have to allow Azure services to access goes away. Okay, so let's go back to the basic one just for the demo purposes. I'm gonna put my server admin credential for this server. So essentially, I will give ADF the right to create and manage SSIS DB inside that server. Okay. Let's see a bigger one. Let's say S1 or something, and I'll do test connection. When I do the test connection, ADF essentially tests the connection using that server admin credential to make sure that it can actually access it to create and manage SSIS DB. It'll take a while. Hopefully it works. Okay, so connection successful, then we can move to the last part of provisioning. So you know that we have set up the compute properties, the SQL properties or SQL settings, and now we are in the advanced properties or advanced settings. In here, in the final blade, The first property that you have to set up is the maximum parallel execution per node. Remember that I provision a machine with 8 cores, right? In here, by default, it dedicates all 8 cores into the package execution. So if you have a package execution that compute intensive, that will be multi-threading and will need all those 8 cores, then you can leave it at 1. But if you have like smaller packages that you can actually just execute 1 package per core, or even 2 packages per core, you have a choice to increase the maximum parallel execution. In this case, you can go all the way to 16, you see? Let me just choose 8, for example. So in here, the rule is like the maximum parallel execution that we base on our test is 2 times core. So in here, in this case, we have 8 cores per node, so we can have 16 parallel execution per node. But if you believe that your package is so much lighter and you want to do more, you can raise a support ticket, and we can do it on a case-by-case basis. The second advanced property is the most important. Well, it is the nice one that that you really like to know, because this is where that I mentioned that you will use to customize your SSIS integration runtime. In here, you essentially put a SAS URI, a shared access signature, universal or uniform resource identifier of your blob container. In that blob container, you put a custom setup and associated files. For example, your DLLs that you want to enter, your third-party components or connectors, your custom component or your executable, etc. And then when you put the SAS URI here, it will tell us that when we provision your SSIS IR, we download all those files into each of the nodes of your cluster, and then we execute the custom setup such that each node will be customized. So that's really important feature to have. And finally, there's a point here. There's a checkpoint here that will show you to integrate or to join your Azure-SSIS integration runtime into VNet. The only purpose you want to do that is, like I mentioned before, is when you want to have access to on-prem data, or if you have your SSIS DB hosted by managed instance inside of VNet, or a SQL DB with VNet service endpoint. When you select this, you can see here, suddenly you have to enter the VNet configuration. Example, the location of the VNet, the type of the VNet. We only support, we used to support Classic and ARM VNet. Now we only support Azure Resource Manager, the ARM VNet. And you select the VNet. By the way, the provisioning process will automatically find out what VNet you are using for your managed instance or SQL DB with VNet service endpoint, and it will show you what it is. But if you actually don't have the default, or you are using SQL DB in public internet, in public space, then you actually have to select the VNet connected to your on-prem network to have on-prem data access. So in this case, I'll just show, I just don't use it just for demo purposes, so simplify things. So that's it. So you have all the setups. You have the compute settings, SQL settings, and advanced settings. When I click finish, it essentially will provision the IR in ADF. Give me a second. And now we are seeing the sorry, now we are seeing the monitoring progress of the provisioning. You can see there are 3 IR that actually already inside my ADF. The first one is the default IR used only for ADF copy activities, the one that's called Auto Resolve Integration Runtime. This one has no capability to execute SSIS packages. The one that I already have provisioned before in advance is called my Azure-SSIS Integration Runtime. This one is already running, ready for me to deploy my packages. And the one that I just now provisioning in front of you is called Integration Runtime, and it's still starting. So you can actually do refresh to see when it's finished. The process right now, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes. But we are accelerating the process by using container, etc., and other technology. But for now, we will use the existing integration runtime that I have pre-provisioned. Okay, in here, if you can see, I can monitor the one that I already provisioned. Right, I click on this the monitoring icon. If I click on this, you are taken to the screen where you can monitor the IR, the compute resource. In here, you can see so many tiles, right? You can see the status it's running. If you click on that running, you can see that you can actually, if you don't have any workload that you want to run on this IR, if you don't have you don't want to deploy packages or running packages, you probably want to manage the running costs, so you want to stop it. So when you click here, it will actually warn you that if you stop it, we'll release all the VM and all the nodes. So essentially, the next time you need it, you need to restart it again. It'll take another around 20 to 30 minutes, just to make sure that you don't really need it and to save costs, and that way that you don't have to like keep it running idly. Okay. Let's see. Let me just cancel. Just show you that. And there's a resource ID here that you can copy. This resource ID typically is used when you actually go to the ISV website when you want to buy their component. You can give this resource ID to say to them that like I want to license your component for this IR. So this resource ID essentially show you what are the name of your Azure Data Factory and what are the name of your IR, for example. Okay. The rest of the tiles, for example, on the server endpoint, you can see the name of the SQL DB server that I use to host SSIS DB. It is winark.ssisdb.database.windows.net, right? Let me just open it. And you can just copy the server endpoint. This server endpoint is essentially the string that you will use to connect your SSDT or SSMS when you want to deploy your packages or run your packages. And if you want to resize the SSIS DB itself, you can click on this link. Essentially, it will take you to a different portal, essentially your SQL DB portal, where you can actually separately resize your SSDB independently from your integration runtime. Okay, let's go back here. I'll just show you before. Let me see. Yeah, here, so for example, right? So this is the SQL DB portal where you can essentially manage your database. Let's go back to the ADF UI. So now you can see how to monitor. You can see that I have 2 VM already running. They are essentially running idle. So they are waiting for us to deploy our packages, right? So let's do that using SSDT. Let me open SSDT. You can see here my SSDT. For example, I have, let me just move this around. I have a package, that's simple package moving a table X to table Y from SQL DB 1 to SQL DB 2. The table name is actually parameterized. The reason I did that is I want to show you how to use parameter later with environment variables and how to use ADF pipeline parameters to assign those values. But that's later in the modernization part of this session. Okay, you can see the table name is parameterized, right? So let's say I have this all these packages under the project, right? Scale out project, and I want to deploy it to SSIS in ADF that I just provisioned, right? So the SSIS in ADF has the IR running, and you need to have the IR running to deploy packages to SSIS DB. So let's see, just right click on scale out project, the name of the project, and then I do deploy. That will launch the familiar IS deployment integration service deployment wizard. I'll go through all the steps like select source, select destination. I'll just do a quick one. I'm pretty sure if you use SSIS, you're familiar with it. The source, because I use it from SSDT, it's already the package on the panel is the project and on the SSDT panel is the one that I want to deploy. When you select this destination, that is where you enter the string for your Azure SQL DB or Managed Instance Server endpoint. Here, I have the IR provision, right? And SSIS DB hosted by winark.ssisdb.database.windows.net. You need to use SQL Server authentication to connect to it. Let me just put mine. What is that? Mine is like, this one is as connection. And you can see I already have a project because in the past I already deployed the same projects into SSIS DB hosted by this Azure SQL Server, right? So it says the project already exists. I want to replace it or not. No, I don't want to. So I just show you how to deploy. And I will go straight to SSMS to show you the already deployed project. Okay, let me just cancel this. Okay. Now I'm on SSIS, and when I'm connecting to the Azure SQL DB server that already has SSIS DB provision, you need to make sure that you target the SSIS DB as the connection. Let me just, that's the one, right? Remember the one that I have? Let me just remind you back again to the screen. You see? This is the SQL DB server, Savirnak SSIS DB.database.windows.net that already has the SSIS DB in the cloud where I can deploy and execute my package. So I'm also trying to connect there. In this case, when you connect to the SQL DB in the cloud that has SSIS DB, you need to put the target database connection as SSIS DB. So once I do that, if I click connect, I'm now connected to the SQL DB server with SSIS DB in there. And I'll show you the project that's been deployed there. Give me a second. You can see here, if I click on the databases, you can, there's an SSIS DB already created on your behalf or my behalf by ADF. And then on the integration service catalog, you can see the folder of the project, which is called demo. And then there's all this project, which is similar to the project that I want to deploy from SSDT before, right? It's actually already been deployed. Now you see the provisioning of SSIS IR, the monitoring of SSIS IR, the deploying of the package into SSIS IR, and I will show you how to run it. And essentially using SSMS is the same way you do when you execute package on SSIS on-prem. So there's not a new things that you need to learn. You just click on the package, for example, right click, and then just execute. So I will show you that the run package dialog. You see, it's the same thing that you do on-prem. You click, let me see. I'm gonna assign environment. For example, in this case, the environment 1.1 essentially mean. I'll show you what's the environment means. 1.1.1.2.2.1.2.2. It's essentially moving table 1 to table 1, table 1 to table 2, table 2 to table 1, etc. I'm assigning those environment variable into the package parameter that I showed you before. And when I click OK, it will essentially show you the execution report. And you see the new one, the new execution package execution has a ID 145, and it's still running, and it's actually running in the cloud, right? So let me just refresh. Then it's done, it's finished. So it's actually, I just show you a running SSIS packages on SSIS Integration Runtime provision in the cloud using the familiar SSMS tool. Okay, going back to the presentation, I conclude with this demo. Now I will move to the modernization part, or like the more advanced part of this session. First of all, I will show you how to execute using ADF. Let's go back to my ADF page. You click on the pencil icon. It essentially takes you to the editing part of ADF UI, and you can see here. For example, let me switch to Data Factory. I have 5 pipeline already. It's an ADF pipeline, right? And I have one pipeline called my pipeline that has one activity called execute SSIS package activity. This you can create yourself from the toolbox menu in ADF. I think it's under general. You can see there's execute SSIS package, right? You can drag and drop it, and you can create a new one, for example. Let's not do that. I just show you how to do it. Okay, so I have already done that. I have execute SSIS package activity inside my ADF pipeline. And in here, you can see the settings. Essentially, the setting is like, first, you have to select which IR the package will run. I will select the one that actually there's one that's already been ready, the one that I just provisioned. But in this case, I will use the one that's pre-provisioned, the my Azure-SSIS Integration Runtime, right? You can select if you want to run 32-bit runtime or not. You can select the logging level from all the way from basic to performance for both. Just similar, it's a similar properties like you see on SSMS when you execute packages. And then in the package path, you provide the folder name. I'll go back to SSMS. I'll just show you. Here, remember, I deploy my package with the folder called demo, the project called scale out project, and the package called SQL DB table X to SQL DB table Y, right? So those information is the same information you enter on your ADF UI. And here you put the demo / scale out project / SQL DB table X to SQL DB table Y. So essentially, it's ready, right? But one thing that I want to show is when you click in the canvas, if you click on the box, you're actually looking at the activity settings. If you click on the canvas, you're actually looking at the ADF pipeline settings. In here, I have created an ADF pipeline, which is called SQL DB table and SQL DB 2 table. So right now, the value is table 2 and table 1. What I want to show you is actually assigning this pipeline parameter into the activity inside that pipeline. And currently, because it's still a first release, you can do that through the code, through JSON. If you click on this button called code, you can see the code here. And here, it's exactly the property, package parameters property, and I assign the value of the pipeline parameter that I just showed you just now, right? So this essentially, what it does is assigning pipeline parameter values into the package parameter, into the package parameter. So in this case, you can start chaining activities and you can pass values from one activity to other. Okay, so let me try to run it. Let me see. I think I made some little change before. I have to publish it just to ensure that there's nothing changed. Let's see. Oops. Normally, now, yeah. So dismiss. So now I can just trigger. When I do trigger, I essentially triggering the execute SSIS package activity inside this pipeline that will actually run the package deployed to SSIS DB. So if I do that, trigger now, right? It's running, and then you can actually, it's running my pipeline. Let's go back to the monitoring page. So this is my history that let's say I have like a manually triggered. There's one of pipeline execution failed. The last two succeeded, and the new one is in progress, right? So this is the pipeline run monitoring. And if you click on this button to view the activity run inside that pipeline, you can see the activity is actually called execute SSIS package. And it's actually already succeeded. It's so fast, it's already succeeded. And you can see the output here. You can see that that output of the SSIS activity execution is actually 146. And this can be used to link back to SSMS to see what's the messages or the execution logs. Like in this case, 146. Let's go back to SSMS. I just did the manually before from SSMS 145. If I refresh, it will show that 146 also execute successfully. Now you see that I can actually execute SSIS package from ADF, right? The reason why we want to do this is because if you look at the server, if you connect to the SQL Server on-prem, you normally see a note here that has the, why don't I do that right now? Let me just show. I'll show you connecting to a SQL Server on-prem that you normally do, right? I'll show you something the difference. So here is my server endpoint in the cloud. This is my SQL Server on-prem. You can see in my SQL Server on-prem, there's a SQL Server agent, right? With a SQL DB, with SQL DB Server in the cloud, SQL DB does not support a SQL Server agent. So if you want to schedule your package execution, you can actually use ADF. And here is where I will show you how to schedule package execution using ADF. Let's go back to the edit canvas. Remember that when I can actually do a trigger now. Now, if you select to create a schedule, you can just click on new or edit. And then you can see I can choose an existing trigger or create new. When I create new, this is essentially the interface to create a schedule to run your package regularly. So you have all these 3 different schedules. There's the normal schedule trigger. There's a tumbling window with advanced property. The one thing that really nice is the event trigger. Event trigger is essentially allowing you to trigger your package execution based on file arrival on your blob. So this kind of feature does not exist on SQL Server on-prem, right? So with ADF, you can actually trigger your SSIS package with file arrival on Azure blob, on your Azure storage. So that's example of scheduling your SSIS activity inside an ADF pipeline. What if you actually you prefer the familiar interface of SQL Server agent? Let me show you how to do that. In here, we have a neat feature that we created such that you can actually schedule it from SSMS, but it will auto-generate the ADF pipeline activity and trigger for you automatically. So if you right-click on here, you can see the new item which is called schedule. And if I click on that, it will essentially sign you in to Azure, and it will find out which ADF, which Azure Data Factory that has your Azure Data Factory. So it will ask you to sign in to Azure. Let me sign in. Give me a second. We'll ask for my PIN, I believe. Give me a second. I just authenticate it using my mobile device. And now, essentially, my SSMS is signed in to my Azure account where I provision my SSIS DB. In here, you can see this feature will automatically create a data integration pipeline activity and trigger under your Azure Data Factory to schedule your SSIS package using the SQL Server agent user interface. Let me show you what is the interface look like. So here is the, and the naming will be essentially the name of the package. The naming will be pipeline underscore the package name and then your creation time, or activity underscore your package name, your creation time, or trigger underscore your package name, your creation time, etc. I'll show you in on ADF portal how to do that. Okay. Here's the package, the same execution properties, the 30-bit runtime, the environment, etc. And on the schedule, if you look at it, this is exactly the same interface that you use with SQL Server Agent. And you can select your frequency, either weekly, monthly, or etc. Right? And then when you click OK, it will tell you that it will create ADF pipeline activity and trigger automatically, and you can monitor it back in on the ADF portal. But you click here, it will jump to the ADF portal, to the space where I created the pipeline before. Let me just show you before. You can see here, right? I have 5 pipeline already only, right? In here, the new one. Let me see. Switch to Azure Data Factory. See, I now have my 6th pipeline, and the 6th pipeline is auto-generated by SSMS. It's called pipeline underscore package name underscore timestamp. And then there's a activity that's also auto-generated, and all the setting is already pre-populated automatically, right? The name of the activity is the same, activity underscore activity underscore package name underscore timestamp. And then if you look at the trigger, there's also a trigger automatically generated. And essentially, the trigger will be auto-generated already running. So you don't have to do anything. Basically, once you enter the schedule, your package execution or your ETL workload will be run based on your schedule already. Okay. So that is so far. Let me just show you what is the. So I just show you how to execute using ADF, how to schedule using ADF or SSMS that auto-generate the ADF pipeline and activity and trigger. Now I will just show you a complex way. It's not complex, but it's actually a very nice way to provision your SSIS integration runtime just in time or on demand. I'll go back to the ADF portal. I'll show you one of the pipeline that, for example, this one. So instead of a pipeline with just execute SSIS package activity, now I create a pipeline with 3 activities. So the 3 activities, like the first activity is a web activity that actually will call a webhook to my Azure automation to execute a PowerShell commandlet that start my SSIS IR. So that means like I only start my SSIS integration runtime when I'm ready to execute the package. After I execute the package, it will automatically also stop the integration runtime just in time. So that way you manage the cost of running your SSIS IR, only spinning it up and spinning it out only when you want to execute package, for example. So that's one of the modernization aspect that you can use with ADF to orchestrate SSIS package execution. Okay, let me see. I think I don't have too much time anymore. Let me just go quickly to the 3 interrelated features that I talked to you about. So first, I will show you what is the Enterprise Edition. Enterprise Edition is essentially the same like what you have on SQL Server Enterprise Edition. On the SSIS part, there are these 5 advanced group of feature, like change data capture components, Oracle, Teradata, SAP BW connectors, SSAS, SQL Server Analysis Services, or the Azure part connectors and transformation, fuzzy grouping, fuzzy lookup, term extraction, term lookup. All these advanced or premium features available only on the Enterprise Edition. For some of this feature, though, especially the second bullet point, the Oracle, Teradata, and SAP, not only you have to provision the Enterprise Edition, but you also will need to use custom setup to install the specific Oracle, Teradata, or SAP driver or providers. So now I will show you what is the custom setup. The custom setup is essentially an interface to alter the default operating configuration of your IR. For example, to start some Windows services that not normally by default started, or install additional components, like for example, this Oracle driver, right? The custom setup include an entry point, which is a file called main.cmd. This is where you enter your custom setup script. And with that, you have associated files like your DLL, your MSI, your EXE, etc., to be uploaded into a blob container of your own Azure storage account. And then on that blob container, you need to create a SAS URI where you can use it to provision your IR. So that SAS URI, SAS URI will be used by IR provisioning to download all your files and execute execute it on each of your nodes. And once it executes your custom setup, we will upload the execution custom setup logs to the same container. I will show you what the container will look like after running a custom setup. This will allow you to essentially install any kind of component. You can have free components, paid component, licensed or unlicensed one. Talking about the licensed one, I will show you why we actually have a new feature for ISV to use to adapt their license or paid components on SSIS IR. As you know, normally ISV will implement their component, or they will bind their license with the machine property on premises, right? Normally, they bind their license to a MAC address or machine name, etc. In the cloud world, SSIS Integration Runtime, those properties are volatile. That means like it's always changing. Whenever you resize the IR, scale up, scale down, scale out, scale in, or whenever we actually make security patches, make a rollout, those machines are released and we allocate new ones. So the old method of ISV to bind their license is not applicable anymore. So we create a new variables for them to bind their license. And this variable is called cluster ID and cluster node count. I will show you what is a typical scenario of ISV. The little guy here on the left is essentially the customer. Let's say one of our joint customer will go to an ISV, like Cozy Rock, Kingsway Soft, or Pragmatic Works, for example, and they will buy a component. When they do that, they provide the cluster ID to the ISV, and then they take a product key that they can put into the custom setup. And when they execute the custom setup, it will essentially reach out to the ISV activation server with the cluster ID and product key that they bring along from the purchase process, right? The ISV activation server will provide the activation key, and then the custom setup itself will essentially install the activation key inside a local store, for example, a registry. So that is installation time. At runtime, when a customer have designed their packages with the ISV component, and when they run that package, at runtime, the package will actually check the local registry and compare the cluster ID where the package is running to make sure that it's already licensed. So that's how a typical flow of how ISV can bind and validate their license on SSIS IR. Here are there are 8, for example, so far they have 8 major ISV that already support SSIS IR. So Theobald, Sentry One, or Pragmatic Works. I think Sentry One just recently purchased Pragmatic Works. So Cozy Rock, Zappy, Kingsway Soft, etc. They all have components that able to run on SSIS IR. And we keep talking to more partners to support SSIS IR, so that way you can use more and more license components. Okay. On the custom setup itself, I'm not going to run a demo. I just show you what is the main.cmd look like and what is the execution custom setup look like. Let me just show you what my container look like first. You use the Azure storage container. In here, you can see, right? There's a blob container called my container. In there, I have uploaded my main.cmd, which is the custom setup script. And I have Azure PowerShell MSI because I actually want to install Azure PowerShell inside my IR nodes, because I want to run, for example, execute process tasks, SSIS, to run many different Azure commandlets to manipulate my Azure components, for example, right? And then there's a third-party component which is called OH22is.match setup, etc. Right? This one is actually a third-party component that does the data matching. Essentially, it does a data dedupe or data matching to group a table based on like a certain familiarities. I will show you like a quick demo on that. And then there's this, for example, a PowerShell script that you can use with Azure PowerShell. So essentially, this is the content of my container. And then when I want to use that to provision with my IR, I just use this menu called Get Shared Access Signature. When you do that, for example, you have to make sure that it's a read and write, right? Because you want to be able for us to download all your files and also to write back execution log. And you have to make sure that the lifetime of this SAS URI is long enough, as long as the life of your integration runtime. Because whenever you start and stop, the SAS URL will be used to download your files. And whenever we do a rollout, we renew your nodes, we always need to download your custom setup again. Okay, let me just cancel that. I'll show you a main.cmd just quickly. This is my main.cmd. Let me just edit. Very simple. Let me move this thing. The first one is I just I execute the set command. The reason why I do that is I just want to show you what are the Windows environment variable available in each of my nodes that can be used to license any component. This is I just show you that I mentioned before, right? And here, for example, I'm installing the Azure PowerShell. Right, and I said make sure that the Azure PowerShell log of this custom installation will go to the custom setup script directory. And in here, I'm installing the third-party component that does the data matching, and that's it. So when I do that, and I provision the IR, it will actually show me. Let me just refresh this. Give me a second. Give me a second. Refresh. I should show. Let's see. There you go. I need to refresh. So you see in my container, there's a new folder that created by SSIS IR, which is called .main.cmd.log, right? When I click on it, this is essentially all the logs of your custom setup. In here, for example, I can just open one of them. I just provisioned this recently. Let's see this one. And here, if I can open this. Oh, sorry. An Azure PowerShell log. Second. Why is this not? Give me a second. There might be some error in here. So let me just skip this. Essentially, all this folder will show you all the logs of your custom setup. And then when you run the custom setup script, the IR will actually upload all this log here. Okay. And let me just show you back to the deck. So I will execute one of the package that has the matching components. I'll show you the component, what it look like. Here, the SQL Fanatics is a third-party component. So I actually already deployed it into my SSIS DB IR. I'm going to execute it from ADF. Let me see. I think this is pipeline 5. And you can see here in the setting, right? So there's a folder name, demo, scale out project, and the matching.dtsx. Matching.dtsx is exactly this package with a third-party component. I'm going to run it in the cloud the same way like I did before. Trigger now. Okay. It should be running. What it does is it will show you on my on the result. It will take this table. I'll show you what is this table. The table 3. Oh, a second. Okay, this table 3 has 500 entries, right? It's essentially a first name, last name, street, postcode, city, and country. And the package that I built is actually will group this this table into a new table, which is table 4, that shows a grouping based on similarity of first name. So I will see if the execution is finished or not from ADF. Let's check. Okay, it's already succeeded. Pipeline 5, I'll show you the output. Right, the output is like a operation ID 147. So I'm gonna see, let's see the operation ID 147 report. No, sorry, where is that? Give me a second, I will show quickly. Yeah, you see, 147 is already succeeded, right? And I'm going to show you the result in a table 4. In table 4, the result of that package is essentially grouping the table rows into rows based on similarity of first name. Let me just type this. You can see there's a new table, right? Let me just put order by, give me a second. Matching group. Matching group. Okay, I'm gonna run this query again. And you can see, go to the bottom, you can see all this group, the matching group 9, matching group. You can see here, like for example, matching group 73, the first name is very similar, Yolando, Yolanda, Yuki, Yoko, Valentine, Valentin, etc. So it shows that the third-party components of matching data works, okay? And that's it for my demo. Next is essentially all the links that you will need. If you have any question later on after this session, you can email me. There is this SSIS Advisors Yammer group where we discuss about roadmap and we prioritize feature based on popularity and requests from customer. And there's also my team blog for announcement of new features. And then the rest of this deck is essentially all the documentation you need to provision and use SSIS in ADF. That's it. Let me just stop sharing. How do you do that?
Okay, great, Sandy. I will just share my screen. So
okay. So you're gonna take the sharing control, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, go ahead. And if you have any question, we can address that.
Yes. So once I finish running through my slides, I have a couple of slides, and then we can take the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
All right. Great. So if you have any questions beyond this webinar, you can join these groups, the Facebook, the LinkedIn groups, and we are also on Telegram, the mobile app. So SQL Maestro's Learning Solutions, we have announced SQL Maestro's masterclasses where MVPs, MCMs, and world-renowned trainers will be taking deep dive sessions on SSRS, Power BI, SSIS, and machine learning, and whatnot. And we have the SQL Server Performance Tuning video course by Amit Bansal. The popular performance tuning course is coming in the video format now, and it will most probably be released by March 2019. And if you wish to get a 50% discount, and you can subscribe now. The HOLs, hands-on labs, you can access more than 120 labs on our official data platform Geeks website and also on SQLmaestros.com. We have some of the demos free just for our DPG members, so you can always go and access that. We are working on learning kits, and if you wish to have a SQL Server health check, you can always visit our SQLmaestros.com, our official website for SQL Maestros Learning. So you will find all these options there. And if you have any queries, you can always contact us. Write a mail to us at contact@sqlmaestros.com. So that's it. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today for this webinar. Do not forget to subscribe our YouTube channel, where you will find all the previous webinar recordings, including this one. And do not forget to join our groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. And more importantly, we will be posting a webinar pic of today on the groups in Facebook and LinkedIn, where you can give your feedback, which will be very appreciated, and it will help us in growing the community. So once again, thank you so much for joining. Sandy, you can take over. Let's see if you have any questions.
I see a small question about let me just read this small question. Am I correctly understand that starting and stopping Azure IR takes 20 to 30 minutes? Only starting IR will take 20 to 30 minutes. Stopping is much faster. Stopping is like less than 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, and does Microsoft count starting and stopping time to be paid for? When you start, there are part of the IR that actually we still waiting for our underlying infrastructure to provision the node itself, the VM. So when there is no VM yet inside the pool that we allocate for you, there's no charging. But as soon as the VM is actually allocated for you, and then we actually start installing your custom setup, for example, because we are doing that to install your custom setup, to enable SSIS, etc., that will be charged. So they are part of those 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how fast the underlying infrastructure provision the VM that are not charged, and there are part that's actually charged. That's actually charged. Okay. I think that's the only question I see there. Is there, can we get a presentation? Yes, you can. I will send this presentation to Rohit. So Rohit can actually distribute to all of you.
Yes, Sandy, we have a question in the Q&A panel by Bodhisatya. If you can just switch over to Q&A panel.
Oh, okay. So I just switched to the Q&A panel. Give me a second. There's a question if Azure Data Factory is a replacement to SSS. Actually, the answer to that is no. Azure Data Factory is not a replacement, but it's a superset of SSIS. So essentially, before Azure Data Factory, let me just open. Before I open that Q&A, I'm just reading the chat question on the chat one. So essentially, Azure Data Factory is a superset of SSIS. SSIS become one of the main feature inside Azure Data Factory. So just to be correct, Azure Data Factory is not replacing SSIS, but it swallow SSIS as part of its main first-class feature. Okay, so that is, I think that is all the question from the chat window, I believe. Let me just see. Yes, and then switching to the Q&A panel, one of the questions is, do we have a connector to Hadoop system on AWS? Okay, the answer to that is like, yes, I think we do, or if we don't, we are planning to have one in ADF connectors. So the way we actually develop the product is like right now, we rarely add new connector on SSIS, but we keep adding more and more connector on the ADF side, because we don't want to duplicate the efforts. So once you have SSIS running in ADF, you can actually use the ADF connectors that exist. I think we have 70 different connectors, much more than what we have in also SSIS on-prem. So you can use that. And if the Hadoop's Hadoop connector on AWS is doesn't exist yet, you can always put a request in the Yammer advisor group, and then usually we prioritize feature, and then we release based on popularity. Okay. Second question is, there are multiple steps can we figure in job agent, and so how do we insert? Yeah, I just showed you before in the SSMS part, right, where you can actually see an interface that's similar to the SQL agent, but actually will provision the scheduling, the trigger in ADF, right? That is when you host your SSIS DB with Azure SQL DB server. But if you host your SSIS DB in Azure SQL Managed Instance, Azure SQL Managed Instance actually have its own SQL Server agents in the cloud, which is exactly the same or similar to the SQL Server agent on premises. Okay. I think that's it. Is there any more question?
One more question in chat window, Sandy. So.
Oh, okay. Let me just go to the question. Okay. Do we need a separate instance for SSISB if we plan to? No, it's not. Essentially, if you have already SQL Managed Instance, you can use the SQL Managed Instance server endpoint that I showed you before in my demo, right? You can select on the selection, the SQL settings part of the IR provisioning, you can select your SQL Managed Instance server endpoint. And you have to make sure that there's no SSISDB already inside that instance. So when we receive that, when we provision, will automatically create and manage SSISDB inside your SQL Managed Instance on your behalf. Okay. Let's see. There's another question in the Q&A. Can we do data transfer from OLTP application to OLTP reporting without using it, but only there? I believe. Let me see. I think if that, in order to do that, if it's covered by any of those 70 connectors, and you should be able to do that. Like I mentioned before, in order to do a data transfer on ADF without using SSIS, you need to use a ADF copy activity. And this copy activity has 70 different connectors available. And one of this connector, or any two of them to cover source and destination, we should cover OLTP application database or reporting database, right? If it doesn't, you can always request for enhancement to add more connectors in the connector set for ADF copy activity. Okay. Anything else? Any other question? Any alternative to CDC in cloud to identify change record? Yes, like on SSIS, you can use the CDC component on Enterprise Edition. On ADF, you can actually use a table. Essentially, you can like have a watermark table to make sure when you actually do replication or like change data capture, you make sure that you always start where you stop previously. There is like a documentation to do that with ADF that does not need to use a CDC component like in SSIS. I can show you the URL later. There's a documentation for that essentially. Yes, we will do that. The question is, please share ADF turning portal from Microsoft. Of course. Well, essentially, when you go to Azure azure.microsoft.com, you go to your portal. If you have a ADF provision, when you click on this ADF, you will have all the tiles and properties of that ADF. One of those tiles is essentially to open the ADF portal. Yes, the tutorial with a tutorial on the SSIS related one I show you in the deck before. It has all the documentation required for you to use SSIS in ADF. So all the links to the documentation and tutorial is in that last slide in my deck. Okay. There's any other question?
Okay, thank you, Sandy, for answering all the questions. So if anyone have any questions, you can post up your questions in our Facebook group. I'm sharing the link in the chat window. So we'll forward that questions to Sandy and we'll get it answered.
Yes, especially because I need to mention that because we are based in China, so we cannot get on Facebook. Facebook is blocked in China. So whenever you have a queries for SSIS in ADF or ADF on Facebook, Rohit, please forward it to me by email. Okay?
Absolutely, I'll do that, Sandy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I think we're done with all the questions. Thank you so much, Sandy, for taking your time.
Yes. You're welcome. And I hope I hear from you guys soon with more
Absolutely.
questions.
Sure, definitely.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sandy. Meet you soon in DPS 2019.
Yes, we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.